the King O. I guess you could interpret that as King Omega. Hello again, ScotsThinker, just coming back from the cinema on a nice sunny day, again. This time I have seen 2 animated movies. Yes, I'm gonna do a double review for one video because why not? Outside in the sunny weather, why not? It just so happened that it's a Monday, as Olin Rodgers would say. I got nothing, I got scat. So, went out of the way to see 2 movies. I went to see Flow and King of Kings by Angel Studios. Now, I heard a lot about Flow in that it was the movie that won the Oscar award for 2024 for Best Animated Movie. And I'd seen an advert for it. It looked really impressive. This movie that was about a cat surviving in this flooded area with a group of other animals on a boat. I thought probably my only time to go and watch it, so I went to see it, and I really liked it. I'd say it's on par with films like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, another cat movie, and The Wild Robot, another nature-y kind of movie. And this movie is very impressive, I must say. It's the main draw in this movie was that there's not any dialogue in the movie. The cast consists entirely of animals like we'd encounter every day as they're adjusting to surviving to a very drastic situation and exploring this very mysterious environment. And certain events play out which leaves a bit up open to interpretation, which I'm quite intrigued by, actually. It's quite the experience to go to a cinema and just sit down in the cinema, and the audience doesn't say much. They're just focusing on the present moment of seeing these animals interact with each other in this gorgeous, beautiful world, and taking in the mysteries around them. And there's so much that's conveyed here with so little, and I love movies like that. That's why movies like The Red Turtle is amongst one of my favorite movies ever made. It's the kind of movie where the movie's not trying to throw like everything at you all at once. It's taking a simple approach to just show you a pretty simple way of doing things in regards to storytelling. And these animals are just interacting with each other in order to survive. So I should really break down the plot first to elaborate my point. I think for the sake of both movies I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to give a major spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen Flow and King of Kings, I would highly recommend doing so, although with King of Kings it's not really anything to spoil about because it's a story you've heard so many times, and rightly so. With Flow, if you want to see the experience for yourself and not spoil many of the surprises, I won't give them away. Well, I'm warning you now. I'm gonna have to spoil this movie in order to fully elaborate on the aspects of the movie that really intrigued me and I'd like to share and have a conversation about. So anyway, let's get started. So Flow depicts these animals just minding their own business, trying to survive, and throughout the movie we see remnants of human civilization, whether it be sculptures of animals, of a statue of a human being, these grand epic cities, and boats, and temples, and ancient pieces of architecture. So there's an implied human civilization, but we never see any humans throughout the movie. The cast consists entirely of animals, and the story is conveyed specifically by how these animals interact with each other and how they adapt to this rather cataclysmic event. So the main focus is this black cat who first takes a fish from the dogs and then ends up getting chased by the dogs, and then they get distracted by a rabbit, only for the cat to notice the dogs running away from something, a deer stampede, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, there's a big flood. My oh my, there is a big flood. A big, drastic flood, and the cat and the blonde Labrador meet up together, and they go to this house where this man had been carving these sculptures of different animals. They settle there around that area. It's assumed that the cat could possibly be living there, or maybe the cat just likes to, you know, lounge around being a cat. The dog takes a wee-wee by the statue, which annoys the cat. But, much to their dismay, the water levels just keep rising and rising and rising. The dog manages to make it onto a boat with his other dog friends, but the cat has to make a run for it, make it on top of this enormous cat sculpture until eventually he sees a boat, which he hops onto, and this boat is also accompanied alongside this other animal. Hold on a minute. A capybara, if that's how you pronounce it. The cat encounters a capybara on the boat, and together they get by with just wherever the boat sails until eventually they come across a few other peculiar characters. This mother of tall bird, well, more specifically, they encounter this pretty tall secretary bird, I believe it's called. Yes, they encounter this secretary bird, I'm convinced is a female secretary bird, and they also encounter this ring-tailed lemur who is very clingy and possessive of different human-made artifacts that he finds and likes to just fiddle about with. The cat learns how to navigate the boat, and eventually they come across the blonde Labrador, who for some reason got separated from his doggy friends, but the four of them are all together. Then when they reach land, the cat encounters, I think it's the same, yes, the cat encounters the same female secretary bird, and I'm convinced it's a female secretary bird, judging by her subtle little character designs, the way she interacts with her fellow birds when she's defending the cat from hostility, and she gets into a fight with this bigger secretary bird, and then there's pressure from the different birds of the tribe, and they injure her wing, which compromises her ability to fly, so she sticks around with the cat that she defended because she had pity on. You can there's a lot of storytelling going on with so little. The characters don't, overtly talk, so a lot of what they convey to each other is implied by the way they interact with each other, the way some creatures are more hostile towards others, or the way certain animals call out to others to call them over, or to share some food that they found, so on and so forth. So the secretary bird becomes the boat's sailor, and so the five of them are going on this adventure. They encounter many different trials and tribulations, and some of these trials that these animals make more difficult for themselves just by nature of them being, animals who would rather cave into their carnal behaviors rather than to think of others first. But gradually you see that despite their setbacks, these animals start to more coherently work together to get through this flood apocalypse. I could go more into detail about the exact nature of how these events go on, but to make a long story short, the cat comes across this very big sea creature multiple times that saves the cat a few times during critical moments. Seriously, it was kind of a miracle that the cat survived drowning the first time this big sea creature saved this cat the first time. So eventually they come across the other dogs that the Labrador got separated from, and they all have their squabble with each other. And then the storms get particularly stormy, the boat begins to break down, and then something very curious happens. You see, as the cat sort of crashes onto the shore and is separated from the rest of the boat, the cat decides to venture up to the highest pillar of the remnants of some kind of ancient civilization, or some kind of implied ancient nomadic tribe with the sort of labyrinthian patterned design at the peak of this rocky pillar that the cat climbs the stairs of, and the cat finds the secretary bird there. And then something quite supernatural happens. At first I thought, okay, is this condensation of the water going back up to the clouds to become part of the clouds and then rain down again for watering? But I noticed, no, these water droplets that are floating upwards seem a bit too big for the whole condensation process. And there is no denying that this cat and the secretary bird are both encountering something quite supernatural, and they're floating up, there's no gravity, and then the bird ascends up into some kind of portal of light, and then the bird's gone. So I interpret that as, okay, it was the secretary bird's time to die, so there was this portal to heaven, and it's got this biblical pattern to that one bold person who served God, and his mentor figure went to heaven in a very similar manner by having the chariots sweep down and take him up. I think it was very similar to that. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I noticed that pattern, and I wonder what kind of thematics it serves there. I mean, we don't get any straightforward answers with this movie. The movie just lets the events play out and just leaves it up to you to interpret, which I find to be a very fascinating approach. It's not like other kinds of movies where they leave certain bits out, or they leave some story bits kind of muddled up, like with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, or leave some bits ambiguous in an unsatisfying manner. No. The way this plot is structured is that you see events play out, and it leaves unanswered questions in a way that was intriguing. So however you interpret what just happened, I personally interpret it as the secretary bird was gonna go to heaven in a supernatural way, leaving I suppose biblically, symbolically, leaving the cat to do the rest of the work, because the bird was depended on to guide the boat. Now it's the cat's turn to guide the rest of the animals. So the cat tries to make it back to the boat, the glass buoy, only for the waters to suddenly go drastically down, because this great chasm opened up to drain all the water on the planet. And so just like that, everything's going back to approximately the way it was, aside from, the big chasms that have opened up. The cat approaches this area filled with lemurs who have the possessions that one lemur the cat befriended was holding, but the cat can't seem to find that lemur who was with the cat throughout the journey. But eventually the cat does find that lemur, and the lemur guides the cat to where the boat has crashed over a dangerous over the chasm. And if the dogs and I keep forgetting the name of that animal, the capybara and the dogs are stuck on the boat, which is very dangerously over this chasm, and so the cat and the lemur figure out a way to get the creature safe. I mean, the dogs manage to leap off just fine, but the capybara is in danger of the boat not swinging to his convenience. So the lemurs and the dogs get a rope that was cast down by the cat, and they all start pulling for the capybara to jump. But then some of the dogs get distracted with another rabbit to chase. So the golden Labrador and the lemur use all their strength to heave the boat, and then the capybara and the cat manage to jump off, and then the boat falls, and they've made it safely. Now, this could be like the happy ending. Now, this is pretty much, they're all safe now, as far as we can tell. But at the same time, we get another deer stampede, which may be implying another flood, but as the cat investigates, he sees that, the cat sees that that the sea creature that's helped the cat several times throughout the adventure is now all beached up in the middle of the woods. So, and the film ends with the cat comforting the sea creature as it dies, and then the cat and the dog and the capybara and the lemur look down on the rippling water. Very gorgeous rippling water. This is a gorgeous movie. And then the credits roll. And then after the credits roll, we see a brief shot of this whale creature out in the ocean as the sunset. Now, curiously enough, as people were leaving, the end credit scene, the after credit scene showed up with the whale, and then I heard kids saying, "Oh, the sea creature! The sea creature's alive!" Is it? Is the sea creature alive? I mean, I find it unlikely, but maybe it's quite interesting. I guess this is taking a similar approach to John Carpenter's The Thing, where the ending is vague and there's multiple possibilities that people could interpret with the ending, which I think is a very fascinating approach, because it leaves it into a very bittersweet kind of ending where, yes, the cat and most of the cat's companions did survive, but at the same time, this event is not without its consequences, and the flood event may happen again, it might not. Was that whale we saw the sea creature that survived, or was it just, and did it survive because there was another flood event, or did we just cut away to some random whale and the flood event never happened again? It's pretty vague and left open to interpretation. I find it curious, now that I think about it, that even though the flood was quite cataclysmic, the entire Earth, in this movie at least, wasn't entirely flooded. There were still some high peaks of civilization and high pillars of other civilizations, and trees and mountaintops and hills. So not all of it was flooded, but a lot of it was. It's pretty interesting. And it's backed up by very beautiful presentation. These graphics, I love them. It's very watercolor-esque graphics, which really brings out the beauty of nature and the appeal of these animal characters with the way they express with their eyes. And I love how the animals interact with each other in this movie. They can be very hostile at times, it can be very funny at times, and you understand everything that's going on in these animals' heads. I also like how the music is used sparingly. I think that gives more room for the storytelling technique of Ma, or in this film's case, the slow-paced nature of the film as a whole. Although one could argue that the film doesn't really use Ma because the story keeps on going and going. But regardless, the overall ambience of this movie is brilliantly immersive. Absolute cinema. I'd probably rank Flow in the same kind of way I'd rate Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and The Wild Robot. It's the kind of movie that takes you on a journey and leaves an impression on you. I love those kind of movies, and I want more movies like that. So I did give Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and The Wild Robot an 11 out of 12. Yeah, I know I gave a different rating to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish when I did that review years ago. But the thing is, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is the kind of movie that actually gets better the more you watch it. So, yeah, I'd probably rate Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and The Wild Robot an 11 out of 12. And I would rate Flow the same way, an 11 out of 12. This Flow movie doesn't really quite leave an impression on you as impactful as the Red Turtle, because with the Red Turtle, it used so little to convey so much about life and all its highs, all its lows, and all the mysterious wonders that can go into that. And yeah, Flow is very similar to the Red Turtle in its approach. But if you do get the chance to see Flow in the cinema, I would recommend seeing Flow in the cinema if you can. Now, on to King of Kings. King of Kings is a CGI animated movie brought about by Angel Studios. Yes, the same Angel Studios responsible for the global phenomenon TV show, The Chosen, as well as bringing us the spectacular and simultaneously controversial movie, The Sound of Freedom. It's also responsible for housing some other forms of entertainment like the Wings Feather Saga adaptation, as well as this upcoming anime called Gabriel and the Guardians featuring Johnny on Bosch himself. Yeah, that studio. King of Kings is a CGI movie which essentially revolves around Charles Dickens basically telling the gospel story to his son. That's pretty much the movie. And you all know the gospel story by now. It's a kind of story that's been told so many times throughout history, has been adapted so many times by different storytellers. I suppose the only major... And the gospel has been represented symbolically so many different times on a lot of your favorite entertainment. And in a way, that movie even... the King of Kings movies... why did I say movies? And in a way, the King of Kings movie does point that out, that the King Arthur legend was very much inspired by the gospel story. It's obvious that this King of Kings movie was aimed towards a younger demographic. So for the first scene or so, there could be some rather cringe, childish kind of stuff going on where Dickens is trying to dramatically retell his Christmas Carol story in a stage, but for some dumb reason he decided to bring his family along specifically so they could interrupt his show alongside their pet cat as well. Mate, why'd you even bother doing that for your official business by trade? Like, why would you do that? Like, again, I know you're meant to set up the dynamic between Charles Dickens and his son, but you could have done it in a more tasteful manner than that. But thankfully, the movie does get better as it goes along. Although, another major flaw I found with the movie is that in the scene depicting Mary and Joseph trying to find room, and then this one innkeeper says, "There is a manger at the back." I noticed there was one particular shot where I didn't see the innkeeper's mouth move when he was supposed to talk. I did not graduate with a Bachelor of the Arts degree for nothing. I've noticed the detail, so you animators think you can get away with your shortcuts? Nah. Myself and others will notice. We're not letting you off the hook, I'm afraid. I mean, I get it, it's more low budget, but there are still some visually impressive moments, like certain sky shots and certain moments of character interaction. That's pretty impressive. And yeah, the movie does get better as it goes along. There's some surprising amount of brutality and harsh topic matter, and of course the great light at the end. It doesn't shy away from some of the more grim topic matter. This approach to storytelling reminded me of something Don Bluth deeply believed in when it comes to the art of storytelling. that you can show children any amount of scary moments as long as there's a happy ending. And even they, I think in a way, the people making this movie acknowledged that aspect where Charles Dickens says a moment that's quite striking, but then he says, do you want to keep going, son? And then the son says, yeah, I'll keep going. And I like the way that Charles Dickens engages with his son with the story, like leaving him in anticipation, initially hooking him in with his childish love for the King Arthur and or the hero's tale, that kind of thing. He hooks him in, but then using what he's learned over the years, combined with different behaviors to engage with his son and how he gets his wife involved. He finds fairly clever ways to get his son involved, and a lot of the movie is Charles Dickens and his son and his cat, I guess, imagining themselves in that time period during the time of Jesus Christ. And it's pretty interesting that this particular telling of the gospel story is more or less mostly seen from the perspective of a child's imagination, where a child can insert themselves into the time period, get immersed into it, like really immersed into it. I mean, obviously, Charles Dickens can do the same thing here because he's the one conveying this story to his son. So it's a pretty interesting way of conveying it. I think Bob and Larry did that kind of thing with the story of St. Nicholas and Veggie Tales. There are a few parts of the gospel story that are skipped over, just a few, but the core moments of Jesus' life and ministry and death and resurrection, they're all told here. Enough for you to know why Jesus is the titular King of Kings. I don't think I really need to go on about what happens from this point, because at this point you get the idea, and you've heard the gospel story so many times. I don't really need to repeat it here. But with that said, I can mention the way in which the movie portrays certain moments, which I found pretty fascinating. The way they had Jesus speak a few things, and the way they emphasized certain things that Jesus said, especially with the imagery of Jesus calling out to Simon Peter to walk on the water, and then the whole lesson of that whole scenario was, if you focus on Jesus, you'll make it through, but if you focus on the storms of life, then you're going to sink. Jesus says, you doubted, that's why you sank, but call to me and I'll help. We see the scene play out, as the scriptures say, but we get to see the whole Passion of the Christ scenario, not as bloody as the Mel Gibson version, of course. This is more of a younger demographic film, but still fairly brutal, quite sad, which is quite impressive. And there's this one bit of imagery that I found really engaging. So the whole situation of the whole storm sequence that I mentioned, it's repeated in a way where Dickens' son is depicted drowning, kind of like Samwise Gamgee at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. Then Jesus grabs onto the young boy's arm and then embraces him in a hug as they are underwater, and then Jesus flips him and the son the other way around and then pushes Dickens' son up to the surface as Jesus sinks into the abyss, representing how he took the punishment of death on himself so that we could live. So that was powerful imagery right there. I think it's worth going to see the film just for that bit alone. There's other moments that I found pretty fascinating. the fact that they had their A-list celebrity cast, which surprised me. Like seriously, Uma Thurman as Mary, like Uma Thurman, like Kill Bill Uma Thurman. I didn't, and also having Oscar Isaac as Jesus as well as Satan. That the last time I saw a depiction of an actor portraying both Jesus and Satan, it was that with that particularly weird artsy movie with Ewan McGregor doing both those parts. But anyway. So the A-list celebrities are putting in some great performances there, and in hindsight, the child actor does a great job at, well, portraying a child, and the script is written in such a manner where, yeah, you get that this is a child, and this child is just understanding this gospel story for the first time. Initially getting into it just because there's a similar gimmick of a king getting involved, but then having the gospel story described in a way in which the child can understand. And in hindsight, the gospel is the kind of story where it's rich enough for the educated like Charles Dickens to further delve into, but also simple enough for the simple-minded, for lack of a better term, like Charles Dickens' son in this case, to understand. There's many ways you could interpret this particular telling of King of Kings. Like I said before, yeah, it does start off as rather cringeworthy at the start, but it does get better and better. Like, it doesn't hold back from the brutality, and there some moments are just utter pure cinema in the Martin Scorsese sense. And they get quite creative with the whole storm imagery, and as well as the depiction of Satan and the demons. It's interesting, I think they depict Satan in a similar manner to Dorman from Shadow of the Colossus, where you don't really see Satan as a tangible physical form. In this depiction, he's more like different clouds, as well as this ominous voice. But of course, Jesus is able to refute Satan back by quoting scripture back to him. And I find it quite interesting about the scene in which Jesus casts out the unclean spirit, which then leaps onto the pigs as an alternative to then commit suicide onto the cliff. The way the unclean spirit was cast out, it reminded me of this story that a friend of mine recalls of when there was an unclean spirit being cast out of somebody, and the unclean spirit apparently left an injured hand. So it was interesting to see the wild, vicious nature of this unclean spirit. Of course, there's also the depiction of the overwhelming and amazing miraculous power of Jesus Christ, well portrayed in the movie. There's other creative scenarios, like a scene where it seems like the story's getting sidetracked with the boy losing the pet cat in the streets of Jerusalem. But then we eventually, when they find the cat, they're back in Victorian London. So it's as if to imply, oh, as Dickens was trying to describe the story, the cat got lost, so they had to go out of their way to find the cat. That was pretty clever, as well as further establishing the father-son dynamic. And there's some implication of Charles Dickens, as flawed as he is, taking on that symbolic role of the father figure, you know, that nuclear family dynamic of Christ, the father figure representing Christ, and then the mother figure representing the receiving church. You know, that kind of dynamic at play. Also, I like the Return of the King / Battle of the Five Armies style end credits, where you have the drawn illustrations of some of these characters. I really like that. So, honestly, this movie is great. It starts off with typical kiddie fare, which is rather cringe and rather irritating, but thankfully the movie does improve as it goes along to some powerful imagery. So, for that reason, I can't quite rate it a 10 out of 12, but I will rate it a 9.9 out of 12. If you're looking for a pretty solid movie about the gospel story to watch this year for Lent, I'd recommend this one. Just tolerate your way through the first scene, and the rest is a great ride. So, if you've seen Flow and or King of Kings, what did you think of those movies? Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to a conversation getting started. In the meantime, ScotsThinker signing out.